So a couple of words about Simon. Simon, actually, I met him on the UK earlier this year. We presented together on UK Star, and it was actually a cool experience. I had not met Simon physically before that, so it was a great session. Simon is a QA engineering manager at McAfee on the UK. He's an organizer of the Aylesbury Tester Gathering. I think it's a meetup gathering that he has. And Simon, I promise that I will come and speak one of these days, next time that I'm in the UK. And other than that, he actually leads the McAfee online safety program, where they actually talk to people in school, businesses, and other organizations about all sorts of things that we should actually be careful around the internet. So it's actually a great thing that Simon actually does as part of his, I guess, community participations. Now, the topic of today's session is a great one, and it's about what happens if universities don't actually want to help us, and how can we make a great test, or how do we make a tester about it? And I will stop spoiling it. So Simon, go ahead and take it from here. Just a reminder, guys, we will have 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the end of the session for Q&A. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and ask them. So Simon, take it from here.
Thanks, Joel. Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me. I presented a deck of this earlier this year at UK Star alongside Joel. I've extended it for this particular talk. So just before we start, a little bit about me, although Joel has already helped me on some of this. He's already mentioned what I do. So this is me. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I have 2 young boys. As Joel mentioned, I'm a QA manager at McAfee. The team I work on is the Threat Intelligence Delivery team. We are responsible for the daily anti-malware updates that go out to customers every day for their antivirus products. So my team are effectively responsible for testing the systems that produce the content. If you imagine it's like a car manufacturing plant, we're responsible for the robots that assemble the car, making sure those systems are all working correctly as the daily content is being assembled. Also, as Joel mentioned, I am actually the UK lead for our online safety campaign, which is a program where we go out to schools and businesses and talk to students, parents, teachers, and employees about the dangers of the internet and how to make sure they're protecting themselves and their children online. This is a volunteer campaign that we have that we encourage employees to get involved in, and our scope is any school, any business, anywhere within the region that we can reach, we will go out and talk to them. Again, as Joel mentioned, I run the Aylesbury Tester Gathering. It's a small meetup that's organised partly by the Ministry of Testing. We generally get about 15, 20, 30 members from the local testing community that come along. I'm always looking for speakers, always looking for sponsors. So if any of you are interested or ever in the UK and want to come along, please feel free. We'd love to have you. And the final point to mention, I do like watching mediocre football. For any of you that are in the UK, you'll know that we're not very good, Peterborough United, but you know, I'm from Peterborough originally, so that's my love, other than my family and the work I do. So the talk today, going back, this really started a couple of years ago when Jem Hill, who runs the Let's Talk About Test Baby podcast, did a survey on where testers originally started. From the results she got, not many of them actually started in testing. A lot of them fell into testing at a later point in their career. This is the same for me. I started off as a graduate as a software developer here at McAfee 11 years ago. Worked in software development for 5 or 6 years before taking the plunge and deciding that I actually preferred to improve the quality of the product by testing it and finding issues and reporting them back to the development team before they got released to customers. And I've been in that role ever since. So it made me ask the question, why is testing not where people start? And talking to a lot of people I know as well, it's the same there. Not many QA engineers that I work with or people I've met at meetups or conferences actually started in testing. So where does that come from? What's happening with education, universities, even the way companies are promoting their careers? So what is the state of play? So around the same sort of time, I actually got asked by the university I attended if I'd like to go and do an alumni careers talk. So I responded saying, yes, that'd be great. And I started talking about the fact that I was in software QA. Now, at that point, I probably could have mentioned that I was in software engineering, and that may have had a different response. But as soon as I said software QA, the response I got back was, oh, actually, we don't teach that in our course, so I'm not sure it'd be worthwhile you doing a careers talk on QA. So that kind of left me a bit stumped and left me asking the question, is it just this university? Sorry. So I then dived into some research. I looked at the top 20 universities in the UK. I reviewed their computer science degree courses. I also contacted every single one of the heads of departments or lecturers within those departments to ask the questions about this. It's safe to say the results disappointed. And I'll go through those results now. So to start with, these are some of the comments I got back from heads of department. It doesn't fit with what we want the course to offer. So the course that this particularly came from was very heavy in programming languages. You could learn 6 or 7 different programming languages over the 3-year course. There was elements of AI, machine learning, etc., software engineering principles, but very little on the testing side. We don't see the market need to teach about testing. Again, one that was very heavy in software programming languages from Prolog, COBOL, C, C++, Java, Python, but no mention at all in the degree course about testing. We don't have anyone who could teach it in detail. Now, I understand that universities are very restricted to the staff they have available or people that apply for the roles. But I struggle to see that someone that's teaching software engineering couldn't look into a bit more detail on the testing concepts or how testing fits within the process. And again, the final comment I got was testing is only a part of the development lifecycle, so it's covered within the engineering module. Fine, okay, so it's covered as part of that, but in what detail do we go into? And does it give graduates or undergraduates enough understanding of testing as a career? Usually in this particular instance, it doesn't. A lot of the undergraduates I've spoken to about at careers fairs about this, they don't even realise it's a possible career path. They think software engineering, development, or going into something like DB admin or other avenues are possible, but testing very rarely is. So to give you the results of the modules. So out of the top 20, only one university had a dedicated testing module. Looking through the syllabus of this, Swansea offer something. It talks about test techniques, it talks about test planning, etc., etc. It does seem very, very like the ISTQB foundation syllabus. The way I see it, though, that is a foundation, that is a basis of which to learn from. So having that base knowledge is certainly useful. One university had 2 software engineering modules within the 3-year course which covered testing. That was Newcastle. So again, they had, as a line item of their engineering modules, testing techniques were included, or testing fundamentals. Of the rest, or of the top 20, 75% had a single engineering module which simply had testing as a single line item. And there were 3 that had nothing at all which resembled testing or quality. Oxford, St Andrews, and Cambridge. Now, speaking to Cambridge since, they are actually looking at bringing a testing module in at the college level rather than across the whole university. So one particular college is investigating it at the present. If that's a success, they will then roll it out to the whole syllabus. But at present, it's still not live. So at this point in time, they're still not covering testing. So is it really any surprise that graduates aren't aware of careers in testing? So this started me thinking about how we could encourage and raise the awareness of testing. So to start with, I used the wonderful social media platforms to ask for help. And this is where my Make a Tester campaign was born. So I used the local Aylesbury Testers meetup. We had a collaborative session on it where we wrote a lot of ideas down. I simply asked the testing community and further afield, what skills make a tester? Which skills would we look for in a newbie or a junior tester to start them down the testing path? From that, I had 104 responses with 28 unique attributes, which I'll go through in a bit more detail now. So these are the ones that weren't in the top 5. Resolving conflicts, social skills, empathy, strong diplomacy, adaptable mind, ability to push stuff to the limits, business domain knowledge, rationality, trustworthiness. Programming and automation experience didn't make the top 5. Collaborating and teamwork, and enthusiasm, and giving and receiving feedback. I think that's all of them. Yes. So those are the ones that didn't make the top 5. From that list, really, it doesn't surprise me that programming is not in the top 5. My personal view is that technical skills, programming skills, are ones that can be taught, and especially in a junior role, I would prefer to look for people that have the right soft skills and the right mindset, etc., rather than somebody that's got years of programming experience. But I do understand that it is a useful skill to have, and should be something that if we have someone that has that already, then we shouldn't shy away from that. Looking at the top 5, so the 5th one was coaching and facilitating. So this is a very useful skill, especially given the modern testing principles, which Alan and Brent, I'm sure, will talk about tomorrow as well in the state of testing panel. Coaching that testing mindset, coaching developers how to test their code, is something that testers should be able to do. We shouldn't be the only ones that do any testing. We should definitely try and push those skills onto anyone else in the team that's available to do testing, especially developers, and making sure their code is validated as much as possible before it's released. This also brings in the concept that I've certainly worked with in the past, where it's usually the QA engineers or the tester that ends up being the Scrum Master in the teams that are starting out using Scrum. And usually, because of the way that the tester's mindset is, they usually have a very good grasp of the end-to-end system. They do make a very good Scrum Master. Number 4 was continuous learning. This is something that I think is imperative for any QA person, and really, to be honest, any engineering role. Every day you have the chance to learn new things, and working with people, there is always those opportunities. You just have to be willing to take them. And a sign of someone that's always learning, it will be something that will help them grow, and they will develop new skills and be able to use new technologies through doing that. Number 3 was the problem solving and analytical thinking. So again, every piece of software is a new problem to solve. Testing is a problem solving activity. You have to work out whether we've done enough testing to mitigate the risks, and that also obviously brings in the analytical thinking as well. And the beautiful thing about testing is everybody that's involved in it will do it in a different way. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It just gives the concept that other people will see things differently, and they may see things that that certain people haven't. Number 2 is the good communication skills. Now, for me, being able to articulate a problem, being able to communicate that with everyone around me is one of the most important things. Being able to have the technical knowledge but not being able to articulate it would be a big problem. So this obviously relates to defect reports, test charters, disputing discrepancies with teammates. Having that ability to communicate well also means being a good listener, and being able to listen to the feedback you're receiving and try and do something with it. So it really is imperative that in any concept, whether it be over a Slack channel or, like I say, bug report, or in a meeting, being able to talk through the problems in an effective way that everyone gets the same understanding. So the top one is curiosity and asking questions. So some will say that QA effectively really in our industry should be question asker, not quality assurance. And to be honest, I'm inclined to agree, because it is the most important aspect of what we do, whether we're physically asking someone a question or whether we're asking questions of the system. That is ultimately our role, and we should be doing everything we can to try and find the answers to those questions. It's just something I always say to my team here in Aylesbury is the only stupid questions are the ones that are not being asked. There may be questions that people feel are not worth asking, or they're embarrassed to ask them, but if you don't ask them, you won't know whether the information you get back or not is valid. So I always encourage my team to ask everything they feel they need to ask, and get the feedback, get the information they need to be able to build out a better picture of what they need. Again, from day zero of a project, the tester or any other team member should feel able to ask questions. They should be questioning requirements, design, etc., etc. Even in the initial discussions when a project is being conceptualized, asking that question can help shape the direction of the project. And ultimately, questions can trigger ideas which haven't previously been thought of. A key thing here is in a code review, maybe someone will ask a question and the developer will realize there's a part of the code that he's not developed or needs to enhance a bit further to include the right error handling, for example. So really, are we looking in the wrong places for testing stars? By looking at computer science degree courses, are we limiting our scope for where we look for testers? Ultimately, do they need computer science degrees? My answer to that is no. There's been so many examples of testers that have joined from other career paths, or maybe different degrees that they've just been interested in looking into testing, or they've had discussions with someone and they've realised that it makes a good career choice for them. That's not to say that computer science degree courses couldn't be enhanced to cover certain aspects of testing, but I certainly don't think it's a mandatory requirement to have a computer science degree. A lot of companies are still in the mindset of they need a degree or they need a computer-related degree to apply for an engineering role. I certainly am in the mindset that I would rather have someone that has the right passion and desire for that role rather than the technical degree that really proves that they've covered so many topics in 3 years and they've passed the exams. So the other question this brings is, while we could teach the basic concepts of testing as far as certain techniques being used to identify scenarios, certain documentation types, giving them the glossary of terms that they understand so they can have discussions with people, that doesn't give us the mindset. And the mindset for me is the most crucial part of a tester's role. And this is something that it's really difficult to hire for. It's really difficult to identify people that have that mindset. And I'm still open for ideas to try and help find those kind of people or being able to interview for it. I've tried a few different things, trying exercises in interviews, and I'm still not convinced I found the right format to identify that mindset. But I'm certainly, it's something I'm working on. If anyone has any suggestions, feel free to reach out and let me know. The big question is, how do we reach folk that are unaware of testing that may be good fits for our roles? I've tried advertising roles in the local newspaper that wouldn't usually have roles from technical companies in. I've tried talking to people as much as possible about the concept of testing and QA and the aspects of the role. And there's been a little bit of bite, but not a huge amount. I'm trying to open up the Aylesbury Tester group to try and encourage non-testers to come along. I've managed to get developers and project managers to come along, but I'm still struggling to get people that aren't in some kind of engineering role. And maybe it's just something that's not of interest, but I strongly believe there are people out there that are working in other roles or have not reached the job market yet, still at college or university or school, that may have the right mindset for the kind of people we need in testing roles. So my next stage is I've got 2 projects that I'm working on to try and take the Maker Tester message to the next stage. The first one is, now I know I said that computer science degrees weren't imperative, but I had the opportunity to join an industrial board at the University of Buckingham to help shape their syllabus. And while part of that was, let's get cybersecurity from the McAfee concept on the syllabus, a big push from me was, well, I want to see testing on this syllabus too, and I want to help get it on there. So I've already given a couple of workshops on the type of careers and the type of activities that we do within testing. They're definitely keen now to have testing built into the syllabus, so I'm working with them to try and write that syllabus for them, which hopefully it may be not this year, but maybe next year it might have a chance of being on there. Ultimately, I want to help bridge academia with the software engineering world. From talking to heads of departments at universities and talking and looking at their syllabuses and talking to students, there isn't really that real world element to their degree courses. So it's trying to understand how we can bridge that gap to make the students and the staff more aware of what we actually need out in the industry and what skills would actually help us in our roles day to day with the candidates that we bring in from universities. So this is something that I'm hoping to help with. And again, this is one university. I can't cover all universities on my own. So the more people that buy into this and help push that message, that will improve the quality of graduates and interns that we bring in from universities. The other thing I'm looking at doing, and again, I'm one person, so I'm looking for people to assist with this, but I have a dream of running a testing conference that is for students and people that are unaware of testing as a career. So put it as a chance to showcase our industry, showcase the engineering world, talk about what testing is, how we do it, get experts in from different areas of the testing world, whether it be games testing, security testing, mobile testing, and all the other elements that bring in. I already have a venue for the first event. Spoken to a local university in Aylesbury, and they've basically offered me their facilities free of charge for an event that can hold up to 200 people. So I'm now looking at the prospect of setting that up. But at this point, I'm still at the very early stages of this being a pie in the sky idea. I've got a venue, I've got the idea, but I'd love to have a team behind me that can help organise this, bring the logistics in, look at all the sponsorship deals, bring in the funding, bring in the advertising, get speakers, etc., etc. I know it's not a small operation, so I need to look into how I can make that happen. So yeah, that's, I realise I'm a lot quicker than I thought I would be. I've probably got a lot more time for questions than I thought, but really what I wanted to get out of this today was to make you aware of the Maker Tester campaign and help people push that message further, to teach testing in universities and to raise the awareness of testing careers outside of universities as well. I guess I can start answering the questions, Joel. Would that be the best way?
Yes, Simon. Actually, we have quite a lot of people. Well, in the Slack channel, we can actually take it afterwards. But I think there are a couple of questions that people are already asking here. And again, we have, I guess, even too many. But I do want to ask a couple of them here. Wait, if you want to leave your slides, then I'll just go back to mine. Wait. Sure. I'll ask a question, and then I will switch to my question. And the question here is, if you think that universities are actually having a negative influence of the software profession with regards to the way that they're excluding testing from their courses, meaning given the fact that they're not teaching testing, is it actually reflecting bad in our side?
Possibly, but I mean, it comes down to the fact that maybe we've not been involved enough with universities as an industry to help them shape the content of their courses to directly map to what we need in the industry. So one example was one university I talked to they had a whole module on project management and delivery and methodologies for running projects, and had no touch of Agile, which seemed alien to me. They talked about waterfall, they talked about the V model, and that was about it. And I kind of talked to them and said, but you know, a lot of projects now are running an Agile format. The lecturer knew about Agile, but really it came down to not having enough ability or understanding of the process to be able to teach a module on it. And I think on both parts, I think we need to reach out more, and I think they also need to reach out to the industry more and ask those questions, how we can make our syllabus is more relevant.
Sorry, I was muted. In any case, here's another interesting question. And okay, so you said that, again, we did not see technical skills as part of those skills needed for testers. Do you think that right now, again, as you mentioned, the modern testing principles and working in that kind of area, do you think that this is something that will actually change in the coming future? Meaning, and again, I don't think that every tester needs to know how to write code, but I think they need to be technically proficient enough, at least, to read and understand. And if so, what do we need to do? Meaning, is there something that we actually need to do differently, especially if we're, I'm not going to say giving up on taking testers from university, but definitely going into other venues in order to get them to be testers with us?
Yeah, I agree that there is a need for technical skills. I would always feel that there are skills that, you know, being able to read and review code, being able to look at it from that perspective is something that can be taught once they're in the building. Again, if they have those skills beforehand, then great, then we can take them on with that. But it's not a mandatory prerequisite that they have that. I believe as long as they have the ability to learn, and we feel they've got the passion and desire to do the job well, then they will learn those skills that they need to learn to be able to do the job. And that will include being able to read, review, pick up a tool and learn how to use it, which are all classed as technical skills. Technical doesn't just mean being able to write code. So I believe there's a lot of stuff that they will be able to pick up once they're in the building, rather than it being a prerequisite for the role.
Sorry, I'm just trying to mute myself because this environment is not completely silent. I have a question, and again, it's maybe something that we can share from our side, and at least on the Israeli perspective, the market where I actually work in. We've seen a number of not university degrees, but what I would call maybe vocational courses, where they take people on a 9-month course and they do try to teach them principles of testing and principles of coding, and again, all sorts of principles of even security, so that they can then become security testers, something that's very hard here. What do you think about that approach? Meaning, it surely beats I stumbled into testing from a business analyst perspective that's still very legitimate, but it might actually open another point for people who do not necessarily need to go over college degrees. Have you seen that?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. That kind of prospect is certainly something that should be encouraged. The more avenues that people can learn the skills before they start the roles, the better. I know the Ministry of Testing are doing a lot of stuff where they want, you know, there's a lot of courses on there that give people introductions into the certain skills, like you mentioned, security testing and others. Any aspect that gives people the skills to learn for the role, that can give them a head start is useful. It doesn't, like you say, it doesn't have to be a university degree, vocational courses, etc., etc. People that off their own back will go and learn the skills is obviously one that happens a lot at the moment. But yeah, it's giving people this head start that they can then decide, well, I want to go into testing as a career, rather than feel like they start off in a development role or in something technical support, something else, and they end up falling into testing because no one else is doing it. I just feel there needs to be a bit more proactive pushing on the educational side to give people the skills to be able to start off with that decision rather than it coming later once they've already started off in another role. And I do understand with the way the industry is going as well, that testing in a lot of scenarios is no longer a dedicated individual role. It's just a part of a wider engineering role that's fulfilled by the team. Those testing skills are still needed in some form. Somehow we have to get that expertise. And how we get that is really the thing that I believe needs changing. We need to find a way of giving those skills earlier rather than it being something that comes later in their career paths.
But then again, the question becomes, which are those testing skills you're talking about? Whether are we talking about practical training on exploratory testing, or the correct use of heuristics, or if we're switching over to, again, what because I actually, and this is something that I always find hard, when we're talking with people about soft skills, the softer the skill, the harder it is to teach it. So which are those skills that you think that we can actually teach them and teach them early in their career?
So it's taking those soft skills. So like you say, we can't teach the soft skills, or it's very hard to teach the soft skills. But if we have someone that has the soft skills, has the curiosity, has the ability to ask questions, then they will be able to pick up the necessary more technical skills, like you mentioned, heuristics, and being able to identify scenarios that need testing, looking at the wider picture and plugging the end-to-end process together so they can work out where the quality gaps are. That kind of stuff, assessing risk, is all stuff that they can learn once they're in the role and build that skill up, in my opinion. Of course, I could be wrong, but that's the way I look at it is, take someone that's got the ability to ask the right questions, and you can build someone up with the right skill set if you provide the right training to bring them up to the right level of quality that you want them to do the job.
Okay, don't worry, because at least today you're the expert here, so your opinion actually counts very, very much. I have a question here that I read it, and I had to read it twice. But once I read it twice, then it actually made sense as a kind of a nagging question. And I know the person who asked it, and I really appreciate him. So I'm going to just go ahead and ask it. As an expert, and again, you've done your research, do you think that actually testing is being considered a lesser profession? Actually, because those courses that people are teaching in the university are easier, okay? For most people, the exercises are almost trivial. And so, again, people go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to be doing this testing course as part of my degree because an easy one. And so the byproduct of that is those developers think that testing is, well, you know what, it's something that everyone can do, so I'm not going to do so much about it.
So just to recap, your question is: do we see testing as a lesser path?
Actually, because they do teach testing as part of their curriculum are teaching that as a very easy to pass course.
Right. Yeah. I see your point now. Yeah. So my thoughts are that it's, well, industry-wide, I still feel in a lot of places that testing is seen as the lesser partner to development. I think maybe that reflects in the reason it's not got the importance on the degree courses. And like you say, the universities that have got testing modules, they are effectively covering off the ISTQB syllabus, which doesn't really give a great insight into testing, and it isn't really detailed enough to be able to get someone to start in a role with just that. But we've got to start somewhere, and I don't really know how to persuade those universities. This is the reason I started this, was that I don't know how to persuade the universities to cover how to cover everything they need to cover. I have ideas of what could be taught, but in detail, there's so much. The scope is so great that I don't think it's a single university module. I think it is there's definitely a scope for multiple modules covering different aspects of it to give people a good grounding. But as I mentioned in one of the slides, one of the beauties of testing is that everyone does it differently. So if we go down the route of putting a course in place that, let's use that example, every university then followed and had it, would we be churning out multiple people that have the same mindset rather than giving people the scope to be different in the way we have testers at the moment? Sorry, I've not really answered your question.
No, and again, I think that it's a question to ponder about, because it is kind of a trade-off. On the one hand, yes, we want more people who get out of the university at least understand a little bit about testing, and if you make that course a lot harder, then we might be basically shooting at our feet, and so people won't take the course already. So we're doing something bad. But on the other hand, as the person asking this question, he knows who he is, and I really appreciate that question. It might be having a different effect. So why can't we learn, for example, and this is a question, something that popped to mind. If you look into testing, and if we look actually getting back to Alan and Brent and the modern testing principles, where they say, hey, you know what, testing is something else that we need to have another skill set, another expertise that we have on the team, such as, for example, security testing. Okay, and taking you out of the McAfee place, let's say every company right now needs to have some degree of security knowledge for programming. And still what they do is they have maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 security courses in the university. Maybe we need to do something similar to testing, but then think about a different approach. Okay, so how can we make them? Thinking about the unified approach maybe. And just something that I'm mumbling as the idea comes to head. Let me just check a couple of additional questions. On purpose, I'm not going over to the Slack channels because it was too floated with questions out there. Do you think that, again, having previous training like a network engineer is potentially good for a tester? Do you think that maybe having other type of, again, IT-related degrees is something that could actually help us as testers and approach us to that career?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I've hired people recently that have had electrical engineering backgrounds, which, yes, it's not directly computer related, but it's engineering related, and some of the concepts of the engineering and debugging issues, et cetera, are very useful skills in testing as well. And we've had previous that have been network engineers and come from that side as well. So yeah, having that kind of skill set does help within testing, especially when looking at trying to find areas of weakness and identifying areas that need improvement and debugging problems. That troubleshooting skill set is certainly something that other technical backgrounds seem to have as well.
Okay. Again, Simon, I think that the chat is very, very good. And I think that most important than that, I do recommend everyone to continue going on the Make a Tester. By the way, some people are asking at least 2 to 3 times already, if you get to a syllabus for a course or for a degree in testing, please share it with more people. I guess that there are a lot of people who are interested on that. And what I want to do is actually to pass the conversation back over to the Slack channel and go into a break a little bit earlier at this time. So Simon, thank you very much for this very interesting chat, and I guess this very eye-opening chat. And again, anything else that you want to say? Any last words?
Other than just thank you, Joel, for the opportunity to present this today. I appreciate any chance I get to spread the message further and raise the awareness. Anyone have any questions? I will be on the Slack channel now for a while after this. But feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and we can follow up and discuss further on there as well. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, so Simon, thank you very much. To everyone, we will be going into a break for the next, I guess it's going to be 20 minutes. We will have some slides up, and we will also have some, advertisements from our sponsors. So we do invite you to stay on the line and wait a second, to continue again taking part of the presentations. And we will get back in about 20 minutes to continue with our next session by Laura Oniga on how actually to take care of biases during testing. So once again, just a second here, some technical difficulties. And again, we will get back to you shortly.